through a top-end change on a 2021 FWE. So the only thing we've done so far is we've drained the coolant. So the coolant is drained. The first steps here, Tyson is going to take the seat off. He's got his parts out and prepped them. He's getting ready to take the gas tank off right now. So he has his parts out, so we have a all new fresh top end. So we've got a new cylinder, a new piston, wrist pin bearing, new rings, all of your seals, your gaskets. We've got two different gaskets. We've got a 4 and a 5 out here. We'll show you how to check the squish and everything. But so first step here is going to be get the gas tank off the bike. Coolant drain, the seat off the bike, the shrouds off it, and now the tank. So a few critical steps in the process here that you'll notice Tyson checking. They're very important steps here. Will be the ring in gap and the squish on the bike when he's all set here. So they're a little further down the process as you get the bike assembled, but this is going to give you guys a chance to see exactly how they're measured, what's measured, and everything. So next step is going to be to take the pipe off. Help Tyson try to grab some tools here while you can see what he's doing. Tyson now has a spring puller. Motion Pro makes a really cool one. He'll get out there and pull that. It's got 2 springs on it. You'll end up having to take that flange off later. He's taking that flange off. Notice that the holes are on the bottom side of that. It's very important you put them back like that. Are you taking the silencer off also, Tyson?
Yeah, at least get it loose. Just makes it easier. Get the pipe off.
It's easier to get the pipe off. The reason is they're 2 different angles. The angle between the stinger and the angle between the exhaust flange are not the same, so when you're pulling them, this allows things to move and come apart a little bit easier. don't have one of these stands, you probably should check into getting one. You can get them for around $100 on Amazon, or at least used to be $100 on Amazon. With the world nowadays, they're probably $640, but they're nice stands. You don't have to be bent over working on everything. Right now he's just wiping all the dirt off. Doesn't want anything get down in the bottom end. I know when this one come back, we're going to be throwing Kyle Nightingale under the bus, but it is nicer to get the shrouds off, get everything washed. You guys saw the dirt that was behind all those shrouds. When you're taking that stuff off, especially if you're going to do a top end, the more you can take off and get washed before you do it, you're going to be a lot better off. So one thing we got left to do before this engine comes out is an upper radiator hose and an exhaust flange, and the top end's ready to come off. Isn't that about right, Ty?
Yeah. You can actually squeeze these out of there with the flange on.
Oh.
It's tight, but it can be done.
So, a few little tips. That's a lot easier to get that spark plug out now while everything's tight, rather than getting it apart and then trying to get the plug off. Same for getting the 5 bolts that hold the cylinder head on. It's easier to grab your 10mm wrench and bust those loose right now. You don't have to take them all the way off, but at least just bust them loose. I've watched Tyson do 1 or 2 of these top ends, so I know sometimes what his next step's going to be. Fortunately, he doesn't ask me to do it too often because I get nervous and mess it all up. He's got those busted loose. He will take the nuts that hold the cylinder on and bust those loose. Take them right off. You guys notice some notes you should always take a look at before you take something apart. This one is stamped with a number 4 for a base gasket. Right here is the number 4, so that's what size base gasket it came on with the factory. You can also notice on the cylinder head, let me see if I can show you guys a way to get in here, the 60, that was what the squish was set at. If this was your engine, it's only been worked on by you, you know everything about it, you don't need to check the squish before you tear it apart. But if it's a new to you bike, somebody else worked on it, I definitely would be checking the squish. I know I've watched Tyson do that when he gets something in from new to rebuild at the factory. He'll take a look at the squish just to see what's going on, make sure nothing crazy is happening. Now, sometimes these come off easy, sometimes they don't. We'll see what we got here. Right now he's just moving the piston down so it's at the bottom of its stroke. Everything can come out. Take a look there. It's got a piston. Old base gasket didn't come completely off real easy, but Tyson's gonna put a rag down in there, stop any dirt from getting down in. We don't need any pouring debris down in your bottom end. So. Right now, I should have come over here and got this. He's just taking the piston clip off, pretty easy. Now he can push the piston out. Piston pin from the other side. A little bit of cleanup on the deck of the cases, and this should pretty much be ready to go. Razor blade is one of the best ways to get everything off there. Sometimes these will have a little bit of gray Permatex that we put between anywhere that there's two different surfaces coming together. So between the right case half and the left case half, there'll be a little bit of Permatex there. The rest of the area is really just base gasket. You guys notice the track is extremely quiet right now, and that's because the PWs are on the track. Alright. So, here's our old cylinder, getting ready to replace it. Got a new one. Tyson's doing his last cleanup here on top. What's your first step here going to be, Tyson?
I'm just going to clean this up and get it ready to go back.
And, so we know this is a new cylinder, so we don't have to check it for the size. This would be an A-size piston. But if we did need to check for what size piston we were putting in this, what size feeler gauge do we put in there?
I would use a 2 thou.
All right. So you use a 2 thou feeler shim stock, and you put a piston in there. Tyson will give you an idea here of what it would look like. We don't really need to check it on this one, but he's going to show you how, just to give you an idea.
I take my 2 thou, put it in my bore, and just make sure that it has a fair amount of resistance on that 2 thou. You don't want it to just fall through, but you want it to have a little bit of resistance.
So if that's too tight, if you try to V piston in this, it wouldn't slide through at all. You might be able to push a V piston in there. You wouldn't be able to push a C piston at all.
Right.
But you definitely don't want it to just slide right through. That'd be too much gap on that. So next thing you know, he's going to get his feeler gauges out, and he's going to be checking for ring in gap. So on a 50cc, what should your ring in gap be?
You want 8 thou.
So he's going to get an 8 thou feeler gauge here. He's got that ready. So this is he's got a file to file these rings, because they will need the ring in gap will probably be tight out of the box on these. So he'll get his ring around, align it top to bottom, push it in there. Now here's the key to this is he'll push his piston up through there and get the ring perpendicular to the bore. So now using his feeler gauge, he'll stick it in there in that gap and see what he's got.
It needs a little
So
love.
look at his file that ring in gap there. One of the keys to this is when you're filing this, one of your last strokes on the file needs to be towards the inside of the piston. You don't want your last little bit of material that you're removing hanging out into the cylinder and gouging your cylinder. first ring is good to go. I see you're looking at these for a top and a bottom. How do you know which one's the top and which one's the bottom?
I got letters,
Right.
numbers, letters on the top.
The letters and numbers always go to the top. Same process that he just did with the other ring all over. So these are 2 ring pistons. Is there a difference between the top ring and the bottom ring?
No, they're the same.
They're the same.
That one just needs a little bit.
But what's the purpose of the ringing gap? What happens if you don't file these down?
Well, as things swell, mainly the bridges between the ports, that's between the main exhaust port and the sub port, that will swell the fastest part of the cylinder because it's also the thinnest part. And when it swells, the ring don't have any room to close up, so then it'll just hang in a port. You'll hang a ring, or you'll just gouge the bore all up because your rings are too tight.
Yep.
There we go, that's perfect.
So what he's telling you guys there is these bridges in between these cylinders here, you guys can see the little thin spots there, they get the hottest because they're right beside the exhaust. There's not a lot to cool there, and those swell. When they swell, they stick out into the cylinder. When they stick out into the cylinder, they push that ring, and you don't have gap, then you got issues. Right now he's got the wrist pin bearing. He's putting a little bit of Spectro assembly lube on it. We'll put it in the bike. This is going to be a key thing. Let me show you guys, try to get the best camera angle we can here. So he's going to put one wrist pin clip in from this side. You guys notice he'll just push it down in and then start to twist it. He'll take a little pick and push it down in, make sure it's in the groove. Is there a side of the piston that you like to do versus one versus the other on the first one, or doesn't matter to you?
It does matter to me. I'm just always used to putting my last clip in from the ignition side of the bike rather than the right side. I'm right-handed, and I use my left thumb a lot to push on the clip. So then I make sure my clip is seated properly all the way in. I like to just try to give it a little spin just to make sure it pushes out into the groove all the way.
So you guys heard him. His last one is going to go in on the ignition side. Likes to be on this side of the bike when he's working on it. So we'll try to get a video. I'll stand on the other side of the bike here. Try to get a video of him doing it. So he's got the... left thumb to hold it down in. We'll get the pick in there, pry it over very carefully. There's a spot on the piston to allow it to do this. Make a C-clip tool that really good at doing this. We don't have one here with us. Tyson's pretty good at doing these without it, so you notice he's just now making sure that it's in the groove. You can't be too careful on this spot here. It does matter. So you notice, I go back to this side, there's a groove all the way around there. You really want to make sure that that clip is in that groove. You heard him, he says, "We are money." Alright.
I like to put some lube in my ring grooves before I put them.
We use the Spectro assembly lube. This stuff is awesome.
Very good stuff.
Used to use just 2-stroke oil. This assembly lube just works so much better. Now the piston is ready for rings. Bottom groove is in. You saw him give it a little twisty twist. The twist is to verify that the end is in the pins. Now they're both ready to go. He'll be able to grab the cylinder here. He's gonna check his base gaskets. Which one you gonna start with?
I'll start with a 4 because that's the way it was stamped in the beginning.
You notice he measured that base gasket in more than one spot, and he'll make a mental note because this is fine tuning that matters on this. That base gasket, I know I saw it a couple times. It might have been around a 39, and there may be times you may use a 4 base gasket that's a 39, a 37, and you may get one that's a 42 or 43, and sometimes you need to do some tuning on these to do that. You know, this might be an example. We may be able to need to tighten the squish up on this bike a little bit. So you may be able to get one that's a 39 and switch to a 37, and it might be the trick to make the bike come alive. So he's going to get the piston at the bottom of the stroke now. Putting a little bit of Permatex right there at the surfaces. It just gives you a chance to leak right there where the gasket is, the two different surfaces. Don't need a lot, just a little bit. Come back in here and he's going to put his 4 base gasket on. All new O-rings. Never try to reuse your O-rings. O-ring kit is inexpensive. O-rings stretch. The heat deteriorates them. They're just way better off putting all new O-rings in it when you start. Snugging those out. Now he's going to get his torque wrench out. We use a snap-on digital torque wrench. It's really nice. It's on. He's got it set on Newton meters, and you're going to go to 13 Newton meters on these, correct?
12 to 13.
12 to 13. And can you just tighten these up, go right around? Or
I like to do a back and forth sequence.
all right.
Okay. Now, put some lubricant on it.
Show you guys this is what you should look for. Spectro assembly lubricant. What was that for?
Just to make sure everything's good, rings are all good, everything's moving free and easy. If it feels any kind of tight or resistance, it's probably something's wrong. Take it back off, make sure it's right. It's steps you don't want to screw up on. It could cost you a lot of money and a lot of extra time that you don't need to spend.
So the next step in the process, he's got the cylinder head outer torqued down. Now he's going to get the cylinder torqued down with these 4 studs, and then he's going to be checking the squish. So your squish is your clearance between your piston and your cylinder head at top dead center. It controls a lot of things going on in the combustion chamber. Controls the speed of the fuel that's going in there. Changes, I wouldn't say compression ratio, but
it does change. It'll have a big effect on compression and port timing both. It's very critical. All right, to have the right squish.
So I can tell you, on the stands, a lot of times if we take one bike and we put a really tight squish and a really loose squish, definitely can tell the difference in the bikes on the stand. It'll give it different characteristics of how they perform on the track. So it's something you definitely want to pay attention to. So how we're going to check that now is we're going to get some solder. So we got this stuff at Radio Shack. It's 50 thou. You don't want to get stuff too thick. They make some really thick, some like 1/8" thick solder, and you can't use that because it doesn't compress right. So Tyson's going to get a fresh piece. He's going to bend it.
Your cut on the end is critical. You want it square. You don't want to use these to cut it because this is it. Because your number that you want to hit is out here at the end. So if you're pinching it, you're already off. Use a razor blade, cut it very square.
All right. What's the 90-degree bend for?
Because I'm going to go in my bore. The piston's going to be here. This is going to be touching the side of the bore, all the way to the outside of the cylinder. So I'm going to go in, make sure I'm against the side, and then I use the kickstarter, or if you have the ignition cover off, you can spin the rotor. And then I'm going to kick her over a few times so I know I got a good reading.
You want to make sure you're all the way out to the edge of the piston. Very critical that you feel the side of the side of the cylinder when you're doing this. So now here's what you got. We're going to try to get up close for this one, guys.
See if I measure it down here,
Yep.
It's a higher number.
Okay, what do you got there?
Down
He's got 58
here I got
clear down there.
62. The more I come out towards the tip,
Right here is where you want to measure.
I'm
right?
at 47, 45.
All right.
That's too tight.
Too tight.
So we have to change the base gaskets.
All right. So
See, that's the only difference was it's a different cylinder.
Yep.
Use the same head insert, same cases, but this cylinder is going to require a different base gasket. So you can't always just go off of what is stamped on there when parts are being changed.
So if we ran this bike with a 40, with squish at 44, so the squish was at 60. If we ran this bike at squish with 44, what would happen?
You're probably going to get some detonation in the piston, no matter if you're running C50 or not. That tight. It's too tight.
Yep.
Compression's too high.
What would it have ran like on the track?
It probably would have ripped. It'd have been super responsive. It probably would have ripped. But you're going to cause damage.
It'd have been a very torquey bike, but it wouldn't have had any top end.
Yeah,
so
probably would have fell flat on top.
All right, we're gonna go away for a little bit. We'll come back when we're putting the other base gasket on and checking the squish. Stay tuned, guys. All right, welcome back, guys. We tore that cylinder off. We took the 4 base gasket off. He put a 5 on there. Check the squish. Oh, he's gonna check the squish right now. So you watch what he's doing here. Let me do it from this side here this time. He's got that bent at a 90 degree. Gonna put it in there parallel right on top of the piston wrist pin. He's gonna kick the bike over 3, 4, 5 times. See what he's doing here.
I like to move it around so I know I get it right the tightest spot.
What are we shooting here for? What's the number we want?
You want between 55 and 65.
55 and 65. And
57.
we're at 57. All right.
Good spot to be.
Good spot. So we're good on squish. So now everything is back together on the bottom end stuff. I see while we were gone, Tyson mounted up the exhaust flange. So you had to transfer your exhaust flange from one to the other if you're putting a new cylinder on. If you're replacing your cylinder, you don't need to. So he's got a whole new spark plug.
We've gapped our plug.
He's put the proper gap on it. You
wanna
definitely want to make sure that
these
that
are tight.
is tight. We see these not tight a lot of times, and you get a running issue that really is just caused by bad spark. So now we're pretty much going to go in the exact opposite order of what we did. So let's walk us through so we don't have to be here for all of them. You're going to put a spark plug in it. What are you going to do next, Tyson?
Put my coolant line on, then I'm going to fill it with coolant. These things take coolant really slow, so take your time, make sure you get it full.
All right, one of the tips, we'll stay for show and coolants, tipping the bike back. So these got a lot, inside these engines, got a lot of different coolant paths. Get air trapped in a lot of places. So want to make sure you do it. Another thing here that's, you want to, whenever you're doing something here, if you touch something, finish it up. So if you put that radiator hose on, tighten the clamp up and just be done with it. That way you don't have to, you don't forget about anything. If you're tightening up a nut or a bolt or messing with one, just go ahead and finish it up right away. So let me show you guys here how he's going to put the coolant in it. As he said, this thing does not go fast. I'm gonna step back a little bit so you guys can see how the process goes here. It is windy here in Illinois today. It was beautiful this morning. Wasn't too hot, was a little overcast, wasn't super windy, and it was a great day. Now the sun has come out, the wind has picked up. Here's the trick to this. So this looked full. Average guy would just put your radiator cap on and walk away. But Tyson will tip that up, move it around a little bit, and it will burp some of the bubbles out on its own. And now you can put more coolant in the thing.